It's Grades Day here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, back after the holiday weekend. I'm Chris Carter, your host of the Locked On Steelers podcast, Stars and Skulls, but we lead off talking about Kenny Pickett and his performance against the Raiders, coming up big in the end. But was it that enough to make up for all the offense's problems earlier? We'll break all that down here. Joining me today is Mike DeFabo of The Athletic, returning to the show. It's going to be a fun one. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button in the video if you enjoy it. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Thanks to everyone who stuck with us over the holiday weekend. Hope you had a Merry Christmas, and hope you're still celebrating if you do celebrate anything that's going on right now, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, anything like that. We did miss our Monday episode because I said, hey, we're taking that day off. We had another thing here. But today, we got our man, Mike DeFabo, back from The Athletic. He covers the Steelers for them. Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's always great to talk football with you. Mike, we were both there at the stadium. It was a cold one. It was a very interesting night. But I wanted to get your assessment of how Kenny Pickett handled the game, because the Steelers offense was given chance after chance after chance to take the lead. They eventually did in the final minute, and Kenny Pickett delivered with a strike to George Pickens. It gave the feel-good feeling, but at the same time, a lot of people are like, it's still 13 points. It's not like it was a great game, but I felt like there were a lot of circumstances that got in the way in this game, and that he found a way to mitigate those circumstances and find a way to deliver for his team in the end.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. So one big thing with me for Kenny Pickett is we've heard so much about how he's a winner, and a lot of people talk about that moxie and that poise and the intangibles, and everybody from former teammates at Pitt, coaches at Pitt, even the Steelers coaching staff has pointed out on numerous occasions that's why they wanted him, is that he had that kind of leadership quality where if you put the ball in his hands with 3 minutes left and you ask him to drive 76 yards to get it done, he's the guy you can count on to inspire confidence in his teammates and make those critical decisions in the most important weighty moments of the game. And we hadn't necessarily seen it in its entirety this season. Right. He had his first real signature moment, that victory over the Colts. He led them down to get that, last minute game winning drive. So to me, this was another example of that. And so I did feel like it represented a step forward where you put the ball in his hands, you asked a lot of him, and he rose to the occasion. And so this certainly doesn't overshadow entirely the fact that they only scored 13 points. I think that if he hadn't put together that drive, we'd be talking about this game and this team a lot differently right now. But he did it. He found a way to win. The bottom line is, as a quarterback, a win is not the best stat to say that it's not an individual stat, but it's the bottom line. You're out there to win the football game, and he got it done for the Steelers.
No, I agree. And I think that's the big part of this is that, I agree that a win is not a quarterback stat, but how you contribute to those wins is important. Like, for example, there were some games where Ben Roethlisberger played terribly for all of it, but the defense gave him enough chances to get back in it, and then he would make the play happen at the end of the game. Heck, that was how they won Super Bowl 43. The Steelers defense dominated all game. The Steelers offense scored early and then kind of just fiddled around throughout most of the game. And then on that last drive, they needed to get all the way down the field and get a touchdown, and Ben Roethlisberger got it for them with the pass to Santonio Holmes. But again, I'm not saying that Kenny Pickett is Ben Roethlisberger. He has the clutch gene, but you're absolutely right. This is what I saw at Pitt. This is what Pitt coaches talk about. This is what Steelers coaches talk about. Kenny Pickett lives for the moment. He prepares so much. There was all the talk about, the nook that he's developed in the locker room to watch more film, to take this very seriously. And after the game, he was humble and kind of just very steady about it. This guy just threw a game-winning touchdown on the night that they're honoring Franco Harris, national television, Steelers, Raiders, all this fanfare. And, after the game, he wasn't, he wasn't crazy about it. He wasn't wild. He was just, hey, it was a great way for us to finish, but I have to be better because, we had a lot to clean up in this game. I do think this embodies, the kind of effort that they wanted to see from him as a rookie, that they can say, hey, if you're fighting to do these things in your first year in the NFL, as you grow and pick up more skills, you're going to be that much more prepared when you're a veteran.
Yeah, when I look at Kenny Pickett, his rookie season as a whole, and going into things, trying to figure out how to judge things, I think you want to see progress, but it's not always going to be linear. So,
exactly,
like we want to see him improve in the red zone, for example, which is a very difficult thing for a quarterback because there's less room. The windows get tighter, things of that nature. Maybe some games he's going to show progress in that area. He had the problems with turning the football over too much initially, and then after the bye week, he really has cleaned that up. So that's been an area where he's shown improvement. We've seen him off and on continue to show developments in terms of his chemistry with George Pickens or some of the other wide receivers. And then in this game, he came up with the critical, decisive drive. So with a rookie quarterback, it's not going to be everything at once. You're not always going to see all those things together, but we are seeing bits and pieces in each of those games that to me symbolize or represent progress for him.
No, I agree. I think that you are seeing seeing progress in him, and I think it's a great point by you. Growth is most of the time not linear. It's just not going to happen like that all the time. But you've seen him protect the football. The interception that he threw against the Raiders was the first interception he had thrown since before the bye week when they played the Eagles. And I think that is, and in that moment, it was like, hey, he kind of rushed through a read and even talked about it. He kind of looked to his left and fired a little quick before he got to kind of adjust to where Connor Heyward was deeper downfield. And he just made a mistake there. But, to come in last drive, I think he was 7 of 9 for 65 yards, including the touchdown to George Pickens. And to hear him talk about that touchdown pass, he talked about how he saw that the cover 2 look. George Pickens knew, hey, if it's cover 2, I'm running a seam up the middle. Kenny Pickett knowing that that's what's going to happen, and not only knowing that, but remembering to look off the safety, which is something that Mitch Trubisky said he did. He made made that mistake twice, not doing it against the Ravens just a couple weeks ago when they lost. And for Kenny Pickett, a rookie, to say, hey, I had to stare down the safety and then fire it right down the middle for George Pickens. I think that him to be able to process that in just his first year, really good sign for what he might be able to process after he gets a couple more years under his belt. Yeah,
and there's no question that he's going to be able to draw on these experiences moving forward. Who knows if the Steelers could somehow backdoor their way in, if they're going to get all the luck and all the other help that they need to make it into the playoffs. But this is the reason why you turned to Pickett in the first place when you did.
Yes.
Because now he has this base. He's done this. He's led at least 2 game-winning drives in the NFL. He's developed this chemistry with George Pickens to the point that he knows his other rookie receiver is going to be there. And so these are all things that I think that Steelers can build upon, and why it was the right decision to turn to Pickett when they did, if not sooner than they did.
I think technically this is his third because they considered a touchdown drive that he led against the Saints a game-winning drive.
Okay.
But
I guess like a last-minute game-winning drive, or
No, I agree with that.
Or like a last, when they scored. But absolutely, all these experiences are beneficial for him, and they'll continue to help him going forward.
And I think it also speaks to, there was that crowd that they wanted just the Steelers, hey, just lose out, just tank, just get the higher draft pick. And I think, and I said all along, people thought I was crazy, like, oh, there's not that much value in this, but there's real value in fighting for these types of wins late in the year. These young guys are learning things, not just about the NFL, but about themselves, and say, hey, this is how I got to push myself. This is how I got to adjust in these moments, because when we do have the assets, when we are a better team and we're getting out there, we'll be doing better. I just think if Kenny Pickett and Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris and George Pickens and all these young guys that are learning how to play together and learning how to win together, carry that forward and build upon those lessons, this Steelers offense could be a lot better, a lot faster than a lot of people anticipated.
Yeah, I'm with you. They have invested a lot. People talk about the highest paid defense a lot, but in terms of draft capital, they have invested a lot to the offense as well, with first round draft pick in Kenny Pickett,
Mhm.
second round draft pick in George Pickens, second round draft pick in Pat Freiermuth, first round in Najee Harris. I mean, the list goes on. They just paid Deontay Johnson. They have put a lot of resources into that side of the football. And so, it's just a matter of getting the right plays, getting the right experience level to the point they can capitalize on it.
Absolutely. We'll continue to evaluate this as time goes on and into this week. They got the Ravens this week, the team that put Kenny Pickett in the concussion protocol. As the week goes on, we'll take a look at things. Also, we're just for taking y'all behind the scenes here. We're recording this Tuesday or Monday afternoon, excuse me. So we have not gotten a chance to see Monday Night Football. Tomorrow, when we do, we'll give you a full look at where the Steelers actually stand in the playoff picture, because Chargers Colts does play a factor in that. But before we do any of that, we do got to do our stars and skulls grades. We'll do that in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about one of our sponsors, the Ultimate Football GM game. If you've ever dreamed about being an NFL GM or managing your football franchise, you can make that dream come true by playing Ultimate Football GM, the new mobile game that you can play right on your phone. You can manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through multiple seasons, lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and coordinators. Also, the staff behind the coaches and coordinators, your doctors, trading players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency, and all the things that real GMs do. And in this challenging and realistic game world, Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. I've been playing this game, Mike. I'm on like season 15 and I got 10 titles, man. I'm on fire out here. That's
the Carter Dynasty.
Exactly. Like,
I love that. It's the Steelers of the 70s and the Patriots and anybody else. They're all envious of you right now, Chris.
Exactly. And I probably am cheating somewhere in there, but you can cheat with me. You can get that kind of success by playing Ultimate Football GM on your phone. Locked On Steelers listeners can get a free 100% boost to their franchise just by using the promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, when you're in the game store of Ultimate Football GM. And to download that game, visit ultimate-gm.com or just look it up in the app stores on your phone. Again, that's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. And back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. We just got done talking about Kenny Pickett. We'll talk about him a little bit more because it's grades time here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We had time, look at the film, compress what we, kind of think what we thought, compress it, and say, okay, this is our outlook on things. Now, for those who might be new to the show, our quick look at the rubric here and how we do grades here. We don't do A, B, C, Ds, and E's and all that. We do stars and skulls. What are stars and skulls? Well, just like decals you used to get on your helmet when you used to play football, good and bad things. Stars mean good things. If you get 1 star, it means you had a good play and like a decent day. 2 stars, you had a great play and a decent day. 3 stars, elite performance, all-pro type of day, like contributing to a resume that should get you there. If you stack up enough of those, you get to the Pro Bowl. In reverse, you have skulls, which means bad. So 1 skull means you just had a bad play, didn't really redeem yourself. 2 skulls mean a bad game as a whole, and 3 skulls means you were all-time terrible, sit on the bench, or as Alan Saunders added, there's also the bus ticket grade, which Marcus Allen got for doing stupid things just a couple weeks ago, or last week against the Panthers. But before let's get into a few things. We're going to start with the bad, and I didn't have too many bad marks for this game, but there were some. We did have no 3 skulls, no 2 skulls. I did have a couple 1 skull grades here. I had Chris Boswell for missing 2 field goals. I know the elements were in play, but this guy's now missed 7 field goals now, and that's ties to the most that he's missed in a season in his career. He's kicking in the 60%, and he's getting paid $5 million a year. That's tough on the Steelers. They paid him to be consistent on this team, and he hasn't delivered. Trey Norwood also missed a tackle on the Hunter Renfrow touchdown, also got beat on the Darren Waller deep ball, felt that he could have been better in this game. Granted, he got hurt, so I didn't want to tax him too much. And Isaiah Loudermilk, of the defensive linemen, a lot of them played really well, but he was the one I saw getting whipped the most. That's why I gave him those 3 skulls, those 3 1 skull grades there. Mike, what did you see from those guys, and specifically Boswell? Do you think something's wrong with him?
Yeah, you wonder about Boswell in particular because, as you mentioned, they gave him the big contract. At the time that he signed it, I believe he was the highest paid kicker. They
And then
then,
Justin Tucker.
Justin Tucker then leapfrogged him like a couple weeks later, a couple days later. But when you make that kind of investment, it's a kicker, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're not paying TJ Watt here. We're paying a guy because you count on him to be dependable, to be available, and he's been neither of those things for the Steelers this season. Obviously, he dealt with the groin injury, and you wonder how much that's affected things. And then the other thing that Mike Tomlin has discussed in a couple of instances, whether the kicker be Matthew Wright or Boswell, is just the whole process of the field goal. We're talking about the long snap, the hold, and then the kick. It's more than just one guy. The entire operation is what they call it. And he's alluded to the fact that there have been some problems in the operation. So even as I look back to the game 2 weeks ago against Carolina, one of those snaps was very high that Presley Harvin did a nice job of getting down. So you just wonder, with some of the time that Boswell has missed and some of the other moving pieces, if maybe it's more than just the kicker, and maybe those guys collectively, those three, need to all get on the same page.
Maybe they do because it all needs to be there. There were times I thought the hold was right, but you're right. The timing, if the timing is off, the approach then has to change. And if the approach has to change, then everything is changing about a kicker. There were times I felt like it looked like he wasn't getting his full extension just watching it. I want to say this right now. I've studied a lot of NFL tape. I don't know diddly about what kickers got to do to make kicks. I'm like, that looked good. Like that's kind of just my assessment there. But it does seem like something is off about it. It could be the injury, could be the process, like you and Mike Tomlin were talking about, could be both. Either way, I think he does need to get better. Trey Norwood, like I said, I think needs to improve a bit. And Isaiah Loudermilk, just I think he's kind of proving to be one of the least physical of the defensive line group, and the Steelers need more guys to be physical to set the tone there. But let's get to some of the 1-star grades. We'll get to the 3-star and 2-star grades here in the third segment. But I want to talk about some of these guys that I thought did really solid jobs, they weren't overwhelmingly great. Connor Heyward gets a ton of credit for the jet sweep that he ran and then going down inbounds. Really nice moment for him. Levi Wallace, though, he didn't get on the interception parade that occurred, Mike. I thought he was really solid in coverage. You never saw him getting beat. Deontay Johnson, I would have given him a higher grade if he didn't have the drop that he had. But I thought he was solid. Devin Bush, but Travius Adams, I thought this was his best game. TJ Watt, not as impactful as you'd like, but I thought he was still contributing. He got a tackle for loss up in there. Mason Cole, Arthur Maulet getting that interception, didn't really do much after that, but that interception was a huge flipping moment for the Steelers to get the game back in control, because Kenny Pickett had just thrown an interception, I believe, just the play before that, or the drive before that. And then Larry Ogunjobi, DeMonte KZ, Miles Jack, my other 1-star guys. And we got other guys that earn stars. But Mike, when you look at this list, who are some of the guys that stood out to you? Like, man, like that guy did really step up.
Well, so one guy that stands out to me is Arthur Maulet. And the reason for that is a couple weeks ago, I went to talk to him after the game, and he was like, man, I barely played. Like, why do you want to talk to me? And he did it in a very respectful way. And the reason I want to talk to him is because he's very quotable, a very approachable kind of guy. And so you could tell in that moment he was kind of down on himself. That I believe it was after the Ravens game that he didn't play very much. And they've done some different things, moving Cam Sutton into the slot or using some different personnel packages where he's not on the field. So for him to go from that point where he was not playing quite as much as he was early in the season to then turn things around and have a very impactful game just a couple weeks later, I give him a lot of credit, because that can't be easy. And I feel like that just speaks to the kind of the player that he is. He's been a guy who's been cut on numerous occasions. I thought it was kind of funny earlier this year. One of the reporters asked Mike Tomlin if he might tap into Arthur Maulet's knowledge of the Saints. And Tomlin's response was, well, he's got a lot of helmets in his basement, which is true. He's played for a lot of different teams. So guys like that who can maybe put a bad performance or a little bit of adversity in the past and then move past it and produce a positive result, that's the reason why he's still in the league. And that's the reason why he's continuing to carve out a niche in the Steelers defense.
I hear that entirely. I also think it's important that you see some of these other names up in here, Larry Ogunjobi and Montravius Adams. The Steelers, and you also had, I put Devin Bush and Myles Jack in here. The Steelers were more physical up front. The Raiders wanted to run the ball at times. They took it away from them. This was the worst rushing performance the Raiders have had as a team all season long, and they have the leading rusher and the guy who Mike Tomlin said was the best rusher in the NFL this season. What did you see about this defensive front that made them stronger in this game?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when they struggled a couple weeks ago and we were asking Terrell Austin, Steelers defensive coordinator, about this, he acknowledged, like, yeah, sometimes it is schematic, but also some of it is just want to and being like, we want to be a physical football team here and we are going to get off the block. And so, yeah, some of it is like, are you in the right gap? Are you assignment sound? Those kind of things. But some of it's also the desire. And I think that that's what you saw more than anything is I think the guys realized, the magnitude of the game and all the other things that went into it, kind of playing for Franco Harris or trying to put on a performance that respected and honored him. And then they responded to that. I would be curious if there was some kind of an internal challenge after the Steelers struggled against the Ravens in the run defense, because they've subsequently played Carolina Panthers, who are a good rushing team. And then, as you mentioned, the Raiders, a team that in the cold weather was going to be committed to running the football. And in both instances, they rose to the occasion.
No, I agree. They did rise to the occasion. This is 2 weeks where the Steelers played the Panthers last week, and people might think, well, guys, it's just the Panthers. Who cares? The week before the Panthers played the Steelers, they had over 200 yards rushing against the Seahawks. This past week, after they played the Steelers, they had over 300 yards rushing against the Lions. Not that either of those teams are superstar defenses, but for the Steelers to hold them to 21 and the other side, they get 500 yards combined between those games. I think that does show you there is improvement there. The improvement will have to really be shown against the Ravens this week. They do it then I think it's a statement. It's like, whoa, this group did step up to the challenge there. We got more grades coming, 2-star and 3-star grades coming out. Did your favorite player get on either one of those lists? We'll talk about it in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we've got to talk to you about PrizePicks. And PrizePicks, of course, is daily fantasy made easy. All you got to do, you're not playing against thousands of people out there who are picking a bunch of lineups. All you're doing is picking 2 to 5 players, and you look at their PrizePicks projections. If you think they're going to get more or less than their projected stat, you can win money. Just pick more or less, and you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. And it's not just NFL games. You can do it on NBA, NHL, college sports. There's so many different ways to make money with PrizePicks. So that's why you got to go and get yourself PrizePicks today. You can download the PrizePicks app on your mobile device, or you can go to prizepicks.com to sign up today and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, all capital letters, all one word, when you go to prizepicks.com or you download the PrizePicks app. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Mike DeFabo of The Athletic, and we're breaking down more of my grades here on Steelers Raiders on Christmas Eve. Let's get to our 2-star grades here. I want to acknowledge this. I realized I did this after the fact. Larry Ogunjobi was in my 1-star. I meant to take him out of my 1-star and put him into my 2-star because I do actually think that he had a special night, even though it wasn't a big stat. The interception that Cam Sutton caught at the end of the game, he was in Derek Carr's face at the last second. I think that he forced a worse throw than it would have made if he was clean there. So I gave him 2 stars for that, not 1 star. My apologies for not fixing that on the slide. We'll adjust that after the fact when we do our season ending grades and everything. But other 2-star grades that I got here: Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. I thought the backfield was really solid in managing situations and coming up big. I also thought from the offensive line, Dan Moore Jr. and Kevin Dotson might have been the best collective game between the two of them with handling the pass rush and keeping things clean there. I also gave 2-star grades to Alex Highsmith. He had a huge sack in a big moment and was helping in the run defense. George Pickens, a really great catch down the sideline and the game-winning touchdown. Pat Freiermuth did have a drop, but I felt he was more contributory than Deontay Johnson this game. And a guy that's gotten a lot of heat this year, Robert Spillane led the team with 12 tackles, was every bit part, Mike, I felt, of being physical in the run, in stopping Josh Jacobs and the run game. When you look at these names, what are you thinking here, Mike?
Well, the one guy that stands out to me is Najee Harris. He's been a guy who's taken a lot of heat this season, especially early on, and he didn't perform to expectations initially. And it was kind of hard to diagnose what was the reason. Is it because maybe the offensive line wasn't creating all the holes for him? Was he hampered by the foot injury that he sustained in the preseason, and he had to wear a steel plate until about week 6, I believe, in his shoe? Or was he just kind of indecisive and not hitting those holes for whatever reason? And I felt like this was another game where he continued to push those question marks further and further into the rearview mirror. And he's done that really since the bye week. And what really stuck out to me was the final drive. The way that he was running physically through arm tackles.
Oh, yeah.
That's Najee Harris. That's the guy that when you look at him and you stand next to him in the locker room, you're like, this is one of the most physically dominant athletes I've ever, stood next to, just in terms of the combination of size, speed, strength. And, he doesn't have necessarily that breakaway top end speed. So he needs to be the guy that turns a 2-yard carry into 6. And I think that that's what you saw much more consistently the last game. And that's what you've been seeing much more consistently since the bye week.
No, I agree with that entirely. You've seen it more consistently lately, and you're absolutely right. Like when he caught that pass on the final drive and he's breaking tackles, he's getting more yards. You feel the energy that he's bringing, that he's bringing to the Steelers with what he was doing in that game. And it wasn't, and it wasn't a game that's going to stand out statistically. 16 carries, 53 yards. 6 catches for 42 yards, but I mean, still, that's 95 yards of offense, converting, moving the sticks, finding ways to make things happen for the Steelers. And I think that's stuff that you expect you expect from him, and you need from him to kind of move the sticks. You're making guys miss. Against the Panthers, he forced 10 missed tackles. PFF counted him for just 2 forced missed tackles in this game, but I felt like he could have been given a few more. Either way, I think I agree with you. He's coming up big. Also, again, a shout out to the big guys up front, Dan Moore Jr. and Kevin Dotson, 2 other guys that I think have caught a lot of flack this year, and rightfully so. They both had bad moments, but they had some really good moments. The Raiders tried a bunch of different twists and looks and things to confuse the Steelers offensive line, and across the board, nobody fell for it. So kudos to them for their efforts. But the moment that everyone's been waiting for, who are our 3-star players? Mike, I got 4 names on this list. Can you guess the 4 names who are 3-star guys?
Have you named Cam Sutton yet?
I have not.
Okay, maybe him. Minkah, I'm sure, is one of the guys.
Okay.
Who else we got?
All right. So you got 2 of the 4.
Did I? Okay, good.
You got 2 of the 4, but you're missing a very obvious one. A guy that was huge all night. And
Cam Heyward, he was an absolute beast. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. Cameron Sutton, Minkah Fitzpatrick, both with huge interceptions, and they played all game. Like you said, Arthur Mollett didn't play. He played like 15 snaps, so that's why I couldn't give him more stars. But these guys were on field all game long, and they were just consistently there, giving the Raiders problems. Sutton also had, in addition to his interception, which to me was one of the best interceptions I've seen for a while from a Steelers cornerback, but there was also a play on the field goal drive that the Raiders had where they were in the red zone and Devontae Adams ran a cover 2 beating route, and Derek Carr saw it and went through it. And if this ball gets there, it's a touchdown. And then the Raiders go up 14-3, might be game over at that point. But Cam Sutton, knowing he has the lower cover 2 zone, he can't run with Devontae Adams. He chipped him, he bumped him, jammed him. So the timing in his route was off, and the ball kind of was with the timing of the route and the timing of the throw was off, and it wound up being incomplete. Steelers get to stop on the next play. It was stuff like that all night long that contributed to limiting Devontae Adams to just 2 catches, only really getting beat like one time by Hunter Renfrow and a deep ball to Darren Waller. So really big stuff from him. And just Cam Heyward. You just can't say enough about what that dude does. And Zeke is here to join the show. Mike's dog in the background here. I see his tail popping up and out. But Mike, it wasn't just Cam's plays that he made, but you could just feel the team feeding off of him throughout this game.
Yeah, so, I mean, from the minute that Cam Heyward emerged from the tunnel and he was the one hoisting the number 32 flag, I felt like he was a guy emotionally and physically setting the tone for the Steelers. It was in that first drive that he recorded his first sack, and he ended up with, I believe it was 2 sacks, a pass breakup at the line of scrimmage, and also on Alex Highsmith's sack. He was also part of the little stunt that they used up front, the twist, to get Alex Highsmith free. So, what I like about that is he is such a veteran leader, and you have such a young team, and to have somebody like that just kind of setting the example and setting the tone, I think is important when you have those young players. That he's one of those guys that embodies the Steeler way, and I think he very much felt an obligation to perform up to expectations on the night that they were going to honor Franco Harris. And he definitely played a very big role in that.
And I mean, he got 2 sacks. He was stuffing the run, and just you feel that energy just seep into everybody else. And I think that he was exemplary of that. Also, I do want to say, and not just gloss over this. The reason I gave James Daniels 3 stars, huge in pass protection. There were so many things that the Raiders were trying into his gap that he was helping Mason Cole with. And I feel like he's learned to be more aggressive with his run blocking now, and he's doing some really good things. I think the Steelers' offensive line, Patton Meyer, their offensive line coach, deserves a lot of credit for how that group has grown.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out as well, that, if anything that we've learned over the course of the season and the way that it's evolved in terms of the run game, I think that the offensive line coach definitely deserves some credit there because, they did bolster it with some guys, but it's still not like they've got David DeCastro or Marquise Pouncey on the line, guys with that kind of a pedigree. So for him to take that unit and get them to come together as well as they have this season, that obviously I think speaks to his coaching and the ability that he has.
Absolutely. And it's funny, Mike. I remember very early in the season, the Steelers offensive line was struggling. Everyone's like, what is Pat Meyer doing? And it's like, guys, it takes time. And I think you're seeing if you give a position coach time, they can start to build things. And I'm pretty sure you and I will agree on this point. The Steelers are probably going to be investing into this group very soon to boost that offensive line. So more talent coming there. Again, Cam Sutton, Minkah Fitzpatrick, 2 huge interceptions, 2 huge games from them. But all in all, I thought this was one of the better collective performances the Steelers defense had in there. Mike, before we go, just your thoughts on if this defense has actually figured out some things, or was this kind of just a rise the last couple weeks that we might see taper off in these last 2 games?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people have been saying that, like, where was this defense earlier on this year? Mm-hmm. And I think that maybe one of the most important things has been just TJ Watt coming back. And
I agree.
He has not necessarily played like TJ Watt, reigning defensive player of the year recently, because he's obviously, he had the knee injury, knee surgery. Right. He's coming back from the pec injury. He's also dealing with some other stuff. But I think just his presence alone and the attention that he commands is helping contribute to the pass rush improving. And when you get that pass rush and you put the quarterback under duress, then all of a sudden the corners don't have to cover as long. Then all of a sudden the windows are a little bit tighter. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden the defense looks a lot better. And so, I think that that's been a big key. And, it definitely gives you confidence that, they're not playing up to expectations based on the compensation, but they certainly have improved to the point that you feel like if they did have the full complement of players, maybe this would have been a little bit of a different story this season.
Maybe they're 6-2 when he plays in a game this year. They are, quick math, 1-6. That sounds right. Yeah, 1-6 when he doesn't play. Even when he's not, like you said, at 100%, TJ Watt making an impact on the game and giving other people opportunities. That's what they need to see more of in the long term. But this is the Tuesday episode, so that means later today, Tuesday, Mike Tomlin is speaking at noon from the Steelers practice facility. Mike will be there. I'll be there for Locked On Steelers. He'll be there for The Athletic. So you'll be able to get all of our thoughts in all the different places. Mike, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people know how they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Check me out on Twitter, just at Mike DeFabo, and you can find my stuff on The Athletic. We actually have Great sale going on right now. It's $1 a month for 12 months. So for $12, you get an entire year of The Athletic. One of the fun stories that I wrote, or one of the stories that I wrote recently, was just about the man who has the Immaculate Reception football, how an insurance salesman from West Smithfield got it. He endured some personal tragedy and has a very unique connection to that football. And because of that, Franco Harris himself felt that Jim Baker was the right man to have the football. So you can read that story and many more if you subscribe right now when we've got this great deal going on.
Absolutely. Do check out all the great work that he does over at The Athletic, as well as also with his partner, Mark Caboli. They do a great job covering the Pittsburgh Steelers. Thanks again, Mike, for joining the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Check my work out at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Also, check out this show every day, Monday through Friday, on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you saw this video on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to this channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. Thanks for checking us out and making us your first listen every day. Back Wednesday with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.